Hi, Steve Riley. Welcome to this video. Today, I'm here with my good friend, Glenn Finch. Glenn, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me.
It's great having you here because you have a particular expertise in communication skills with couples, and you have taught this for the military. You've taught this around the world. And one of the things I really, really love is some of the good basic communication skills. I don't want to call them basic because they're pretty sophisticated, actually, communication skills. So my hope is that people, as they come into our Great Life Couples Workshop, they'll watch this video and at least be somewhat sharper on how they can be more effective in communicating with their spouse or partner. But before we go there, why don't you talk just for a minute or two about how you developed this expertise and this experience?
Sure, Steve. It's almost about 20 years ago that I was first exposed to PrEP, Inc. PrEP stands for Prevention and Relationship Education Program. And it was started by Drs. Scott Stanley and Howard Markman, who put together this type of therapy, actually, that was based on over 35 years of training. It's since expanded to 50 years because it's already 2023. And the military actually made it its only approved program for marriage and relationship enhancement over the years.
You and I've talked about these, and I think this is pretty critical. So let's go ahead and get into the heart of it, because you've trained soldiers, you've trained officers, you've trained a lot of people in this content. But you have a particular topic that I really like, which I'm expecting you to cover. So,
Good play on words.
So let's talk about that for a moment.
Sure. So there's this concept of expectations. Everybody has them. Your employees have them of you as a boss. Your spouse had them of you when you got married. Your kids have them of you as parents. You as parents have them of your kids. I have them of you as my partner in Atticus. We have expectations. And I often tell folks that there's hardly anything more disappointing in life than one of those expectations not coming to fruition, or it's being unmet, or I didn't even know you had that expectation. And so we like to divide the types of expectations into 4 different types. And then I'll talk a little bit about how you resolve these unmet or unspoken expectations. And it's in that conflict between what a partner might expect and what you actually expect that some of the danger signs in our communications and relationships emerge. Certainly they do day to day, but sometimes it's because of these expectation differences. And then if we have time today, Steve, we'll talk about some of the skills and antidotes to navigating through some of these tough conversations. And so the first of the type of expectations or category or those expectations we're unaware of. And I know that sounds kind of funny. Well, how do you know something you're unaware of? Well, it's usually pointed out by a partner, a spouse.
Yes.
Well, I really liked a phrase you mentioned a minute ago, and that's create breathing space when we talk about these things. And that's really what PrEP is about, and the skills that those 2-day events are about, was slowing communication down. Because that's really what happens. When communication goes too fast, and we're slaves to digital communication now. So as connected as we are through cell phones and email and what have you in technology, we communicate less effectively than we ever have as a culture. And
That's
part
great.
of it is life is so fast. I often tell people I work with that we seldom deal with the real problems in our lives, except in the context of events.
Got it.
And what I mean by that is the bill comes in. You spend what? Or you come down after a crazy day and 2 employees quit at the office, and you're tired, you're worn out. And it's in those times when our energy is low and our temper is short that we get into these expectation conversations. And so PrEP, over 50 years now of research, they've identified 4 patterns that whenever one or more of these patterns are present in a relationship, it's an indication that it's heading toward a crash sooner maybe than later. And recognizing these danger signs is a real plus. And we all do them, by the way. Even the best communicators find themselves sliding in these danger signs. And I'm going to quickly go over them and then give you an acronym to help you remember them. And the first one is invalidation. And it's a fancy word just to describe how invalidation is putting down the thoughts and the opinions or character of the other person. And sometimes it could be very subtle, like eye rolling or holding arms. You're invalidating what they're saying right now. And we're just kind of putting down their character. And just for a brief moment, everyone who's listening today, think about the last time that happened in the kitchen, or maybe in the office, or in the car ride somewhere.
Or as you're walking out the door.
Is invalidating our partner's thoughts, opinions, and character. A second one is escalation. And escalation is just responding back and forth more and more negatively with each other. This happens more with extroverts, but it can happen passively with more introverted people. And it's kind of like the manager coming out to the home plate in a baseball game because he didn't like the call, and he's shouting, and then the shouting turns to kicking sand, and then the kicking sand turns to pushing and shoving, or how maybe the crumbles on the dining room table and why they were there weren't cleaned up turns into 5 minutes later a conversation about divorce. This types of escalation, it happens especially when communication is so fast-paced. We're not spending quality time with each other, and all those triggers go off one after one. Pretty soon the dominoes are following, and we think the world is ending. And when that happens in a relationship, because your temperature goes up, you feel the heat, you actually feel physiological changes, and you say, oh my gosh, here we go again. Feels like wheels spinning.
Blood pressure goes up.
Blood pressure goes up. We've had this conversation 100 times before. That's escalation.
Why can't you see this?
Why can't you? That's a good one. Third one of my favorites to do, I catch myself all the time, and that's withdrawal. It could be just sitting there and you're having a conversation about what you expected or what you thought should have happened today. And I'm not liking it, so I just get quiet. Okay. That's what it sometimes sounds like. Leaving the room, just walking out and not coming back and re-engaging in the conversation. My personal favorite as a teenager, peeling the tires out of the driveway and letting everybody know I'm out of here.
So if I see, okay, yeah, this may escalate quickly, I'll concede on a small point and not want to get into the real meat of the issue, right, because I'm like, oh, no. I've seen this show before. I don't like the ending, and I am going to withdraw from this conversation. I'm going to bid a hasty battle retreat with the hope of winning the war. And I will come back to this when I have the time and another angle to work through where I might be right, not wrong.
Right.
That's a good one.
And it's a strategy, but in the meantime, that bonding is not taking place, and things.
I didn't say it was a good strategy.
Delayed.
I didn't say it was a good strategy. It was a strategy. All right, so keep going.
The fourth danger sign I wanted to bring up, you kind of alluded to a minute ago when you were talking about the workshop, that with great intent, we brought a spouse too, because we want to do something about this.
Right.
But sometimes that good intent is interpreted negatively. Oh. And that's the fourth danger sign, is negative interpretation. And this one's a little trickier because it's a bit different from the others, because it isn't so much about what we do or how we say things as much as it is as how we interpret things, behavior, or words that are said. So I have this thing that I like to help. Years ago, I did this early in the marriage, don't do it now. If I had a few extra hours, I would clean up around the house. I would do some things. I would provide gifts of my service, until one day I discovered it made my wife feel like she wasn't doing enough. She thought I was making a huge statement, and she negatively interpreted what I was doing. So once we got through that conversation.
This is why I quit loading the dishwasher.
There you go. Another good Good illustration of that.
I not only could I not do it right, but I was interpreted as she wasn't doing it right, and I was doing it wrong, and I was doing it wrong to make her wrong. That is a
Yeah.
very complicated process of loading the dishwasher. The emotional charge of loading a dishwasher, right? So what you're referencing, and this is, we may do a separate video on this, is the 5 love languages. So one of the love
Yeah.
languages is acts of service. So you're
Sure.
if your wife is if Sarah's an act of service person, then you're trying to show love. You're trying to do an act of service. And she interpreted that as you saying that she's not doing a good job, and you're having to clean up behind her. And isn't a relationship wonderful? You're trying to
It
do the
is.
right thing, and you just step right in the middle of a mess,
You
thinking,
can. Yeah.
yeah,
And it can be subtle. Like, let's, if we get away from home for a minute, sometimes somebody bringing, let's say you brought me a cup of coffee. If I was using negative interpretation, or that's where I was predisposed to go, I could be thinking in my head, what does he need what does he want from me? Why is he bringing me a
uh,
cup of coffee? It's so easy to negatively interpret things.
he's trying to get me to do another video again, isn't he?
Right. What exactly? Exactly. We do this all the time, sometimes without recognizing it. When it becomes habitual and it trips things up, and even something like, what do you want to do for dinner tonight? That kind of conversation can be interpreted a number of different ways. But if our tendency is always to negatively interpret what the other's thinking or doing, it's a sign that things may not be as good as we thought in our communication patterns, in our discourse.